Well, good morning. There's a picture of Minneapolis near where the Churchill Apartments where I lived when 1997 to 2003. And today, I just want to give you another excerpt of how I happened to come to move to Minneapolis and transfer within a job when I wrote my first book. So let's just have at it. And oh, this is tricky to drag the cursor to the right. No, well, I can't.
Good morning. Today is February 4th.
Sorry for the time there. I had a little trouble getting the. But that's one thing. Just learning how to manage your own gear and everything. But then I went back to a regular company, which USLICO was United Services Life Insurance, and it owned several other subsidiaries: Bankers Security Life, United Olympic Life, and then Provident Life, which was in Bismarck. And so it had already consolidated some companies. But I went to work on pretty soon. I was working on the billing system there, on consolidating the reporting of the billing system. There was, and that got started pretty well. And I had a social life in the early '90s with a group called Adventuring, with the VA Outdoors group. We went on a lot of trips. One weekend in early 1990, a guy that was in the Army came on one of the trips. And that was the first little exposure to gays in the military, just somebody that came on one of them. And then in 1991, there was a distraction at work. There was a technical security problem at work that was a big distraction for a long time, where I made and several other people missed something that could have caused some serious problems. And that was a great anxiety for a long time. I won't belabor that. But I had not been feeling well for a few weeks in the summer of 1991. I don't know exactly what it was. It might have been like E. coli from a hamburger or something. I think it was something like that. It went away, but it took a long time to go away. But then things started changing as that problem receded, and we got into 1992. Life started improving again. And I went to, during the middle of May of 1992, Keith Meinhold, who had been a soldier in the Navy, came out on national television, and about being discharged and all of this. And that caught my attention. And then I went away. I went on a weekend trip just flew to Chicago. Again, it was very easy to travel, and I flew to Chicago from Washington and drove up through Milwaukee. And it just struck me that this was going to be a big issue. Thinking about this driving around eastern Wisconsin, driving to Greenland, back to Chicago and everything, it struck me that weekend in the Midwest that this is going to become an issue very quickly, and it did. Then I bought Joe Steffen's book. Joe Steffen was the Naval Academy student who would have graduated third in his class, and would have in 1987, but he came out after a couple of accidental events where he thought he was somebody exposed, so he came out as gay. And he had spent a summer on a submarine with no incidents in the intimate quarters at all. I thought that was quite remarkable. Now, there are things that can help. He was also good at chess. He was the best chess player on the submarine. So that sort of made it easy to have a good social reputation, I think, on the submarine. So I bought his book and I read it overnight in the fall of 1992. And then, the election, the economy wasn't real good, and Bill Clinton won the election because George Bush sort of blew the economy a little bit after the end of the Persian Gulf War. I think the Persian Gulf War probably helped set up gays in the military as an issue. That helped draw attention to the military. And so Clinton had promised to end the ban. And so the second day of his term, he proposed ending the ban on gays in the military. And then there was a lot of flack, mostly about that there's no privacy in the barracks. Sam Nunn and Charles Moskos, remember, made a big deal about that. And now we're into 1993, and I have this copy of, I've read this book by Joe Steffen and everything, and I'm starting to think about it. But I'm also working for a company, which, although I was working on a different application, the bankers, the original basis of the company was life insurance for military officers. It's another company now. USAA is the best known. This is another company. USAA is much bigger, I think, than as far as the military market than this was, but it was still significant, and it was beginning to sound like a contradiction. Could that be a problem? And so then the pastor at First Baptist Church in the city of Washington then was Everett Goodwin, and I showed him Joe Steffen's book, and he got very intrigued by it. And so we had various discussions, and I wrote a letter of how you could lift the ban on gays in the military. And I gave it to Goodwin, and he had enough clout in Washington. He could go to the White House, and he gave it to the Clinton administration. He actually did. Wow. And then, this was before don't ask, don't tell, don't pursue. Now, I might have been able to, maybe I didn't get credit for the don't pursue part, because that's basically what I said in the letter, the White House letter. So then, how things went along. They finally they passed Don't Ask, Don't Tell as a law as part of the Defense Appropriations Act in 1993. Then in 1994 they put the actual procedure into the regulations formally. But they said they would not investigate just rumors of saying they would only when there was conduct, is what they said. But then a statement was conduct was the problem. You couldn't openly say you were gay. You couldn't be openly gay. And you couldn't say that you were you probably couldn't say that you were a latent homosexual, because that would imply disturbing the comfort of other people, just like in a dorm.
And you felt, yes.
Yeah, that was exactly the argument. It was exactly the argument. So I started milling this over, and 1993, the end of 1993, I also hear rumors that USLICO might get bought. I hear rumors underground. Don't know who. I hope it's not USAA. I thought it might be, but and those rumors persist. And I went to Charlotte. I went to Charlotte for a week. I'd met some interesting people that I wanted to see again in North Carolina. I went to North Carolina a couple times. And then I went on a vacation to Colorado in August of 1994. And also, at that time, I was a member of Gays and Lesbians for Individual Liberty, and I had written one article about Don't Ask, Don't Tell and individual liberties, and it had been published in print, and handled out in Lambda Rising bookstores and stuff like that, the newsletter, which used to be a gay bookstore. And then in 1994, also at this time, one of the guys the son of one of the people one of the Marine colonels who wanted to keep the band, had a radio show, a call-in show, and he talked a lot about the band on Sunday nights. He had a regular show on Sunday nights that I often listened to, and this went on. And so in August of '94, I went on vacation. Flew to Denver, rented a car, went to a baseball game, the Rockies that night, in the old, but before they had their new stadium and everything, and then flew and then drove. I wanted to drive up to Sterling, Colorado, because that was the place where the rumors of cattle mutilations had been all the time. That was the reason I was going to look at. And so I went into a restaurant at noon and bought some film and so forth, went into a restaurant at noon and found a paper, found some magazine, or found some newspaper that, one of these cases of finding a random publication. And there was a story about a gay bashing in the military in North Carolina for no reason at all. It was just in this regular newspaper, small town newspaper, and I hadn't even heard of it. And I read the story while I was eating lunch in Sterling, Colorado. That was it. I was going to write a book. That was it. One lunch, one newspaper article. And so I spent the rest of the time driving around. I went to Wyoming and so forth, came back and came home. And then knowing what I was, and thinking about how I was going to do it. And September the 1st, we hear rumors that we're going to be bought. And then we find out on September the 12th that it's going to be Northwestern National Life in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Now, I was going to publish a second article about a review of Joe Steffen's book. Was the second article I was going to publish in the Quill. This sounds paranoid, but I waited until September the 12th, when the official announcement was made at work, and at that time we didn't have internet. We had email, but I didn't really have internet. I mailed the article on a disc. I put it on the mail the same day as the announcement. I didn't want to put something in the mail when I knew about a merger. I wanted to wait until a merger was announced before anybody could accuse me of knowing something. This sounds crazy, but that's what I was thinking then. So I waited till that day to mail it, that morning. I knew what they were going to announce, so I mailed it that morning for going to work. That's how fastidious I was. And then, and time went by. I finally approached them about the idea that might be better if you're going to move, if a lot of the operations are going to move to Minnesota, it might be better to be working for a company that is not connected directly to the military. And they sort of agreed. And I'd had a different assignment for a while in the payment system, but then when 1997 came, they were doing replications of their data to send the data to the new system. I need a little.
Yeah, sure. Get you another one.
Throat dried out.
Yeah, no, I think we're coming to the end here.
Yeah. So, this is really full. You press
Sorry.
in 1997, we traveled 5 times to Minneapolis, so I got a chance to introduce myself. So then I got a job, a transfer, starting September 1st, 1997. Now, the book was formally published in a print run on July the 11th, 1997. Then there was also the idea that one of the other employees had been fired. I mean, when I made a change within USLICO, he had been fired for non-performance, and he was black. He complained that he'd been discriminated against for being black, but it was more that he didn't get. He wasn't. It was more that he didn't get. I'm not sure how you some sort of DEI consideration, and I don't remember exactly how far DEI had gotten at the time. They were starting to talk about it, but it was thrown out of court. But I was concerned for a while about that I wouldn't publish the book until that was done away with. But fortunately, it was thrown out real quickly. But there was that little aspect to it, and so once I was in Minneapolis, I was selling the first printing had about 400 copies. People did buy it, people did order it. So the first year or two, it sold. I sold most of the copies. I had a book distributor at the Bookman, which was then separate from who is the main one now? Who's the main book distributor? Ingram is the main one now. And but then the interest in the printed copies sort of started dying, as most books do, So I started putting it online just for people to find it, and started making pretty big websites. So that's where I'll cut it off for today. I said Greenland, that's Green Bay, Wisconsin. That was a slip. And Band, it said B-A-N-D in the text translation. It's Band, B-A-N. Just a few typos. It's hard to get a text translation exactly right when the speaker stumbles a little bit when speaking. But that's what I have for today. I just wanted that little excerpt about how I happened to move to Minneapolis and was there for 6 years. Very good time of my life. And how the ban, the military policy actually could affect the civilian workplace, which was one of my points in the first book. So I just thought I would cover that today in this excerpt from my oral history tape at William & Mary. And I do thank you for listening.